Welcome to our Drawdown East End panel, Seafood for the Future, with 4 amazing women, all in professions that can shape the future of seafood. Tonight, we will explore regenerative sea farming businesses and climate cuisine that are so important and exciting for a regenerative and sustainable future. I'm Diane Shapiro. With me is my colleague, Mary Morgan. Mary is a co-founder and I'm an ambassador of Drawdown East End, a grassroots group dedicated to advancing local climate solutions to reverse global warming. I got very interested in our East End waters when I moved here full-time. I deepened my understanding, love, and need to protect our East End waters through the Shinnecock Bay Restoration Program, SHRP, at Stony Brook Southampton University, where we raised oysters and deposited eelgrass into Shinnecock Bay, and it was really a lot of fun. We are having an exciting roundtable today. Because we have 4 panelists, we will try to keep our roundtable to 15 minutes, so we will have a little time at the end for your questions and answers. Take it away, Mary.
Thank you, Diane. Hello, everyone. And a big welcome to our panelists, Chef Victoria Blamey, Elizabeth Peoples, Oriana Durand, and Courtney Boyd Myers. Eating local food and loving things in season was something that my family just did and enjoyed, both here on Eastern Long Island and in Western New York. Both my grandfathers were involved in farming or food production, and my uncle was a fisherman out of Montauk, so we always had very fresh fish and seafood. I love the idea of climate cuisine, living by the seasons, enjoying local food, especially when they're in season and deliciously ripe, and using everything. Zero food waste. Drawdown has identified several ocean solutions. Regeneratively farmed oysters and kelp are 2 important solutions. Let's start, and I'll introduce our first panelist. Chef Victoria Blamey, who is the chef in residence at Fulgurance in Brooklyn, which is French for dazzling. That started as a pop-up in Paris and now profiles new talent, and was a chef in residence with Dan Barber at Blue Hill, which Dan started to promote chefs he admires who are joining him in making structural changes which our food system desperately needs. His quote. Chef Victoria, you said you grew up eating seaweed in Chile, and you are one of the leading chefs now, helping to shape the future of seafood and our food system. We'd love to hear more about your food journey from Chile and your interest in seasonal, sustainable local foods, and maybe hear about a kelp creation.
Interested probably because of growing up in in Chile, obviously, and for us, obviously, seaweed is part of the landscape, so I think it's just not, there's a couple of things. I think in general we still don't know enough about seaweed algae. We don't know enough about the composition and enough about what we can do with it. But I think it was a curiosity of what can we do with it that it kind of strikes me, and I want to challenge, myself to make sure that I incorporate this into our diet. I do believe that chefs have to change a little bit the food ways, and we have that power at our hand. And yeah, growing up with eating seaweed, I mean, it's not that I loved it at the beginning. I can remember that, but then growing up probably by when I was 15, 16 years old, eating seaweed with onion, cilantro, and olive oil and stews, and it's all over the country. I mean, literally north to south, very different temperatures and regions that we have, and it's just present throughout. And I just think it's so interesting for me, given the fact that I obviously work, in food, in the food business, that we do have the power to educate. I also do think that this starts with educating ourselves. And I'm the first one to say, there is a lot of needed information about seaweed. I do also think, though, that the answer is not to just go from one extreme. You know, I do believe in a really balanced ecosystem. At the same time, I do believe in a balanced diet. I don't think that people need to stop eating, you know, beef or fish or cheese or anything like that. I do believe that it's about how we eat. That it seems to me that sometimes the scale is very tilted either one way or the other, which I hope, you know, I hope that we can change gradually. I think for me, the way to introduce kelp into what I do is been increasing, obviously. You know, I mean, I did train in Europe. Obviously grew up in Chile, I studied in Chile, but I've been training in Michelin star restaurants in Europe, and obviously that's not the first thing that you see. And I think, you know, obviously now that you have the power to dictate what you can, the product that you buy, I think New York taught me a lot about what's seasonal and local, supporting farmers. I mean, I usually buy everything from the grain market or as much as we can. And obviously trying to have something more sustainable. Not only seaweed is nutritious, it also helps the planet, you know, the acidification of water, the nutrients, the carbon dioxide. Seaweed is, you know, I think it's like 75% of the oxygen supply actually comes from plants in the ocean. So like I said, I do think that there's great momentum, you know, for this conversation. I just do hope that the conversation goes in the right direction, you know, not sometimes people want to make something, you know, like the evil, you know, oh, cows are evil, and that's not where we're supposed to go.
Yeah. Are you using seaweed in like salads, or do you use it other ways?
No, actually, I also have it in a dessert. So I have seaweed, I think probably like in 3 preparations out of 6. And one of the ones that sometimes it kills me because it's all over Instagram, but one of the ones that is that I really, really like is a dessert. So we use it with chocolate. We use kelp, dulse, and kombu. I mean, also kelp. So we make a butter with kelp. I use Irish moss from Maine, the ganache, with a really great chocolate from Colombia that is sustainable. And I use dulse seaweed from Maine that I cure with unrefined cane sugar from Colombia. So that dessert is actually really cool.
Is it green?
No, it's all kind of like on brown tones, you know, and it has hazelnut. Yeah, and it's hidden under a cloud of milk. So yeah, it worked out.
You're starting with the raw seaweed, not with anything dried, right? You're starting with the raw.
Dry for the ganache for sure, because the intensity of flavor. You do have to be very careful, obviously, how you cook it, I realize, because if not, by the time it gets too hot, you know, it starts congealing very fast. I use raw sugar kelp from Atlantic Sea Farms, and I have a seaweed sauerkraut that I use with mushrooms as well. I use the stipe. I got a little bit of stipe from them as well in the fermentation with the seaweed sauerkraut. And the blades as well I use with a monkfish crudo, pickled with some locust vinegar from Virginia. So I try, you know, I do think that sometimes, you know, there's a funny thing, you know, people are very used to seeing seaweed in Japanese restaurants, and they think it's very well accepted. The moment you take it from that cultural context, people don't understand how to address it. I do know that there's one dish like here, people are like, you know, and they're like, everything is just weird about it, they think. And you're not used to eating seaweed. I mean, if people didn't grow up eating seaweed, you know, it's uncommon. Yeah. For me in Chile, I did grow up eating seaweed. Obviously not in the preparations that I'm doing it right now. I will never tell you that I had a seaweed dessert, because that would be a lie. But you know, it's not so unfamiliar. Yeah. So I think that is sort of that destroying the myth, you know, that it has to be nori and it has to be at a Japanese restaurant. Yeah. That is one of the big things to do.
Here on Eastern Long Island, a lot of us know the old-fashioned way of doing a clam bake was to put seaweed, you know, on the bottom with above the hot coals, So there was that wonderful aroma, I guess, that
You know
immersed
what's
into the
funny?
plant.
In
What?
Chile, the same. In Chile, we
Really?
call it seaweed charcoal.
Oh,
And we
tell
cook
us how
fish.
it's made. How's it made?
Yeah, and then you start cooking that in the coals. So you make coals with the seaweed. So it's called rascoldo. But you know, there's so many traditions that we're losing as well. I think that was one of the interesting things about the Stone Barns residency, is that I was able to bring back things that I also didn't know that well. So I think there's you know, there's so much that we can do, trying to understand different cultures as well.
Yeah.
You know, not just here or South America. You know, so much in Africa as well. There's a lot of cross reference, you know, that I've realized. Yeah.
And you sound like, as a chef, you enjoy new ingredients. You enjoy. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I just tried to like contain myself because I love everything. So the other day someone gave me a snail vinegar and I was like, I love the snail vinegar, but you know, it depends on the context of your meal. You know, if sometimes you have to curate something, the snail vinegar really doesn't like fit, you know, but I'm very open to that. I love spices, you know, I love cosmopolitan cuisine in the sense of like, just the more diverse, the best. So, you know, and I would say about oysters, yeah, also I grew up eating oysters, you know, since I was 4. And my mom wanted me to do that. So she forced me to eat.
She forced you. Oh my God. I think you froze. If we don't get Chef back, maybe we should move on. What do you think?
I
think she's frozen.
To come back.
I'm going to be putting information about Chef Victoria in the chat box.
Oysters when I was a kid.
Good. She's back.
Oh.
Good. You froze.
Oh, I was frozen. I thought I was frozen, right? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
no, I was just saying something about oysters. I said, you know, I enjoy eating oysters since I was a kid. So I usually incorporate them in my menu all the time. And obviously always composed, you know, between watermelon or candied kelp or, you know, cauliflower and white chocolate, caviar, you know, all weird, funny things, you know. Yeah.
No, they sound wonderful, delicious, and experimental.
They sound absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of them are experimental, and some of the others are like.
Well, Diane's definitely going to Full Gohans. I'm going to be there.
Definitely.
I think the whole panel.
I know Rihanna is coming, so I'm excited for her. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to put some information about you in the chat box and toss it to
no problem
for the next panelist.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Victoria. It was great hearing all of your commentary about what's going on with you. Next, I would like to introduce Elizabeth Peoples, who has founded Little Ram Oyster Company in 2018 to pursue a career as a shellfish farmer with a direct positive impact on improving water quality and providing access to vital, local, and sustainable food sources. Her company is one of over 30 similar small-scale oyster operations in the Peconic Bays here on the East End. So, Elizabeth, we've heard you say that your love of locally sourced food got you involved in starting an oyster farm. Can you tell us a little more about that and about how oyster farming is part of the growing blue-green business trend?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mary and Diane, for hosting us. And it's really great to be a part of such a dynamic group of women on this panel today. So I love this. So I own Little Ram Oyster Company with my wife, Stephanie. And we actually both were in the city for about 2 decades before we moved out to the North Fork. So we were, you were asking about the local food connection. And so basically our history with that is that we took basically looking for a change. And my background is in interior design. I was working on high-end residential projects for about 18 years in the city. And my wife was in advertising. And so, you know, through this whole time, we love food. The restaurants in New York City are absolutely unbelievable. And we were always sourcing local foods. Obviously in the city, that's not quite as possible, but we actually were members of a CSA where they were growing vegetables at a farm in Crown Heights that was not too far away from us, and always going to the green markets. And, we just were, love to cook, not professionally, but at home, it's great. And ended up get as close to our food as possible. And actually, it was in Greenpoint at the fish and lobster market there. And all of a sudden, it was just like this great light went off, and we found out how incredible oysters are, not only for the environment, but as a sustainable food source. And the more we've learned about them, read all sorts of books, and actually we're planning on moving to Rhode Island, funny enough, and went up there, met up with a bunch of farmers and toured their farms, one of which was in the middle of a cold snap. And he had to completely break the ice to get us out in his boat to see his operation. And then we said, okay, this is our 5-year plan. And then fast forward to July 4th of that year, and we were Googling oyster farm for sale, just, on a whim, like what's out there. And a listing popped up for one on the east side of Shelter Island. And we had no idea if it was a current listing or not, but we kind of followed the path and called out from work the next day and went out to visit the farm and toured everything. And all of a sudden, it was just, this was the right fit for us. So we moved out to the North Fork in the fall of 2018 and have set up our farm. And it was a turnkey operation, which was, we realized, the only way that we could, without backgrounds in aquaculture, really kind of get this thing up and running. So that was hugely beneficial for us. And since then we've learned so much more about oysters, and we're actually part of the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program, the SCOUT program. And that was started a little over 10 years ago, where New York State ceded the rights to Suffolk County to lease out 10-acre plots in Peconic Bay and Gardner's Bay. And the idea there was to kind of reinvigorate, reinvent this historic industry on the East End. I mean, oyster, not cultivation, but oyster, there were all these oyster reefs out here, and there were incredible canning facilities, and you see these historic photos of mounds of oysters, and all of a sudden that just kind of went away with over harvesting and the poor conditions of the water, and those were kind of a direct result of each other, because the oysters are, as we're talking about today, they are a regenerative source of food, and each oyster filters 50 gallons of water a day. So, currently we have about 500,000 oysters on our farm. So you can do the math on that pretty quickly and find out that even our single farm alone is really enough to reinvigorate the estuary. And so the development of this whole lease program really encouraged farmers to get out there and start farming oysters. And it was interesting because a lot of the farmers are former baymen or commercial fishing guys, and still do some of that as well. Then there are farmers like us who were drawn to all of the the wonderful aspects of farming, and obviously living out here in the North Fork is an added bonus. And so, what's interesting that we realized, and actually I had mentioned earlier that we went out with some state senators to show them our farm yesterday on a farm tour. One was from upstate, and he was the one who was really interested in understanding what it was that the benefit that this brings to the state. And there is in kind of defining the blue-green economy, it is adding this net positive value to the environment, and also the economic growth for this region. I mean, it's bringing back this heritage industry, and the increase in oyster farming has it is a 435% increase just since this program has started. So,
Wow.
I mean, it's absolutely profound. And, you know, what an interesting kind of byproduct. And, you know, I'm sure the scientists and, you know, who are kind of involved in this planning process probably envision this, but micro ecosystems that are now a part of all of our farms. So, you know, we have a 10-acre farm, and within that, it's called off-bottom culture. So all of our oysters are farmed in cages. And that was part of this inception of the program, was that it wouldn't conflict with other user groups on the bays, because obviously they're recreational users, they're commercial users, and then ourselves that have this set area within the bay. And so part of that, the development of the program, was that it would not interfere with the dredging of commercial fishermen. So all of our oysters have to be raised in cages. And so what happens is we end up with this little reef almost. And it's interesting, the baymen have sort of started, they realized very quickly that finfish are attracted other shellfish, and all of a sudden we have this really active and dynamic environment that's created. And what they're working on right now, there's actually, which was this, I referenced the meeting with the senators yesterday, there's a bill that's currently in legislation to allow us to grow sugar kelp on our farms. And so that is something that we're really a strong proponent of, obviously, because it allows us, so the grow out period for our oysters, it's about 12 to 18 months from when we purchase the seed, which is about the size of my thumbnail or my pinky. So there is this period of time, and obviously in the winter, it's a little bit quieter. The oysters are dormant once the water goes below 40 degrees. And that happens to be about the time when the sugar kelp production is at its peak, sort of from the fall until spring. So the opportunity for us as farmers to have this, diverse, option to grow yet another regenerative product on our farm is pretty amazing. So I think it's all kind of in the works, but there are a few minor tweaks. And one of those is that we've requested that it almost acts as like an overlay to our current lease, so that we don't have to go through a whole nother process, because that just prolongs things and pushes things off. And, obviously we would have to have the proper permitting, but that would be a really wonderful opportunity for us.
Yeah, well, thank you for covering all of that. That was very interesting. I was just wondering, were the senators, did that happen through the scalp program? The senators coming to your farm, was that part of, did they find out about you through the scalp program?
It was actually through the Long Island Farm Bureau with Rob Carpenter, he's incredible advocate for land farmers, for aquaculture, for oyster farmers. And it's part of he was actually doing a tour out on the East End. And so they went to a sod farm and came to visit our farm and went to a distillery. So they had a fun day.
Sounds like it. Okay, so I just wanted to also mention that you sell your oysters from your farm, correct?
Yes. So we sell wholesale to restaurants. We're in definitely a few restaurants out here in the North Fork. We have just started sending them back into the city, which is great after COVID. That was shut down a really large portion of our business, as it did for many. And then we sell oysters at our farm stand. There was a local Southold town bill that was passed back in the fall of 2019, where we were able to actually sell our oysters from the farm stand. So, all the farms out here, you can sell anything on your property. And with the lease program, the leases are set out there's 1,000-foot buffer from the shoreline. And that was part of the initial agreement with the program. And so clearly we can't have a farm stand on our farm. That's not going to work. We're only going to attract boaters every once in a while. So they were figured out a way that we could have that set up on our property to sell oysters in, and we sell ours in a burlap bag, which is kind of the historical way that the oysters were packed. And then we also are have a residency at a winery in Jamesport called Terra Vitae. Used to be Diliberto, and the new owners have really done a fantastic job with their build out and really supporting us and what we're trying to do. And it offers us an opportunity for people to come meet the farmers, and which is very important for people. And, you know, we are in the future going to set up farm tours. We have a spot on land currently at Alice's Fish Market in Greenport, and it's happens to be one of the last working waterfronts. I think maybe the only one, definitely on the East End, possibly the only one in Long Island. And it's really great that we've been able to form these relationships with the commercial fishermen. They land their fish there, and Alice's packs them. And then we basically shuttle the oysters from our farm on land and tumble them and clean them and sort them, cull them, bag them, and then put everything back out on the water that we need to. So
I have to ask the oyster farmer, do you have a favorite way of cooking or serving oysters?
Oh, well, my favorite is obviously just freshly shucked and, you know, pure. But if I'm going to eat them raw, I do like a little bit of fresh cracked pepper on them. I find that really balances out with the salinity of the oyster. And then we actually, I mentioned that we enjoy cooking, and this past holiday season, we did a Feast of the Seven Fishes meal kit package that was sort of a semi, we gave a map of the local farm stands that were still open and encouraged the participants to go shop at the farm stands. And then we provided some of the sauces and prepared items. And then they were responsible for cooking and sourcing the rest of it. And one of those items was our broiled oyster pasta that is kind of our go-to whenever we have extra oysters lying around. We shuck them, put them in a pan with white wine and lots of butter, which could very easily do a sugar kelp butter. I think in the future that would be delicious. And then broil them with garlic until they're just kind of bubbling, and then cook pasta, toss it in together, and top it with breadcrumbs. So,
and you also have,
and where,
okay, so at your Little Ram Oyster Company, your website, you sell other products also, correct?
We do. We currently have we have started a CSA membership, so we call it Community Supported Aquaculture instead of agriculture. And we have about a nice handful of members this year who signed up, so they can pick up oysters every week. But so that program is closed for the season, but we do offer a monthly kit series. And the offer was to either purchase the whole series, or you can do purchase one-offs. So June was our mini net tasting kit, and July is a compound butter tasting kit. And then fast forward to I think August, we have a Bloody Mary kit. So it's something we enjoy. So we figured, why not have fun with it, offer something that is a little more interactive. And so the monthly kits go through the end of December, and they're available online for purchase, as well as we ship oysters and have all sorts of other fun things.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all the information, Elizabeth. And we'll put a link in the chat for more of your information.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, there'll be questions from the audience after we finish introducing all the panelists. But now I'd like to turn to Oriana Durand, a graduate student at NYU, focusing on food systems, and co-leading Eat More Kelp, a Northeast group with a mission to push regeneratively farmed products like kelp into the mainstream and generate wide support for climate cuisine. So Oriana, your focus at NYU is sustainable food systems. You've taken over the operations at Eat More Kelp. Why does climate cuisine and kelp interest you so deeply, and what are your plans for Eat More Kelp.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. Thank you, Mary and Diane, for hosting this extremely important and interesting panel event. And I'm really excited to be alongside all of these amazing and impressive women. Just hearing Victoria and Elizabeth talk, I can't wait to visit the restaurant and the farm. So I'm really excited. I'm a grad student at NYU, and I am focused on sustainable food systems. The program itself is food studies, but I chose to do the sustainable food systems track. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of explore different areas of food just beyond sustainability, which is super interesting. I think like Victoria was talking about, different cultures, and like Elizabeth talking about the policy angle as well. Everything kind of ties together, and it's very engaging. And then, as you mentioned, also I'm co-leading Eat More Kelp with one of my fellow students and friend Josh Needleman, who I see is on tuning in right now. So hi, Josh. And so, yeah, so my story is a little random and not as linear maybe as others, but I came in from a journalism background from college and worked in marketing for about 3 years after college in the beauty industry. And from there, I kind of, my academic and professional journey kind of also, I went through the personal climate existential journey that I'm sure a lot of people on this panel might have gone through, and just overanalyzing, every decision I was making, every choice that I thought I was doing wrong, and figured it wasn't very productive use of my time. So I decided to take a step back and, try to think about what I can focus my time and energy on to be more productive in the climate change movement. And I mean, food for me has always been really important in terms of my cultural background, and just as a consumer, it's what I think about like 99% of the day. And so I figured that would be a good place to start in terms of using that as a space for climate change solutions. So I, decided to leverage the skills I got in my marketing background and my journalism background, and sort of transition industries. So I'm new to the food industry, but that's what brought me to NYU and to studying sustainable food systems, and to being a part of the climate change movement in that way, and using food as what I want to focus on to be a part of the solution. So through that, I got connected to Josh, and through that, I also really sort of got the opportunity to dive into the world of kelp, and got the kelp bug and studied a lot of different things about kelp. Specifically, I worked a big chunk of my semester was focused on kelp policy. Elizabeth, you talked about the kelp policy a little bit, and it was a really important time to focus on it because there's this kelp bill that you touched on, and so it was just a really important exercise to understand how important policy is when we're talking about sustainable food systems. And I don't think I would have gotten that opportunity to think about it more holistically if it weren't for this program at NYU. So ultimately, I also got the opportunity to take over Eat More Kelp with Josh. And what we really want to do at Eat More Kelp is find ways to connect consumers to sustainable and regenerative food sources, connecting people to passionate farmers, to food makers, and just educating consumers about the nutritious and environmental properties of kelp. Through that lens, using kelp really as a vehicle to talk about the larger conversation of climate change and sustainability. But we're also passionate about a lot of different things. So you can't really have a conversation about sustainable food systems without talking about things like, food sovereignty and food justice and food access and wages. And these are all really, really important parts of the puzzle that we want to focus on with and prioritize with Eat More Kelp. Through our partnerships, through our conversations, ultimately the way that we're building our community, that's what we want to prioritize. So we know that our roles here we're students, but we're really eager to keep learning about this topic. We're food studies students, so we want to keep engaging with industry leaders and consumers And it really just, it's what fits with our personal ethos. It's what we believe strongly. And we both kind of have our own separate journeys of having gotten here. You know, Josh is a chef. I'm more on the storytelling side, and we kind of want to bring those two elements together to be doing this work together. So we don't claim to be the kelp experts in the sense that we don't farm kelp. We're not, we can't claim that's part of this really important dialogue, and opening it up for everyone to be a part of the conversation. You know, everyone has a relationship with food. It's not just people in the food industry, but consumers eat every day. And I feel like today it's just too difficult to make sustainable food choices when with all the noise, you know, currently. And so we just want to make that a bit easier. It shouldn't be so inconvenient. It shouldn't be so hard to make these choices. And so we, like I said, we want to use Josh's background as a chef and my background as a storyteller and our NYU network to just make this information more approachable, more digestible for consumers. And specifically when we're talking about kelp, providing consumers with the resources to learn about, you know, how can you cook with kelp, you know, developing recipes with chefs that people can just do in their kitchen, and letting people know, you know, where they can purchase kelp. So really the main work here is being done by the three women on this panel, and that's why it's such an honor for me to be here alongside of them. But like I said,
Oriana, I want to ask you, since you are our student panelist,
yeah.
At NYU, are you kind of unique, or is there a growing trend with people your age interested in like climate cuisine and making that connection?
Yeah, so this is something Josh and I talk a lot about. We're in a food studies program. So in our program, yes, because it's sort of this echo chamber of climate, you know, climate change talk, regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture. So for us, it kind of feels like buzzwords that we keep regurgitating, and which is great because we need to talk about them, but that's not the case for, you know, everyday consumers. And so we want to just find ways to make that more approachable and more digestible and not so overwhelming of a topic, because there's so many, you know, especially right now, there's the food industry, and then there's also the fashion industry, and there's also every other industry that you need to think about as a consumer in terms of making sustainable choices. And the point is not to make it overwhelming. And so, you know, like Victoria said earlier too, it shouldn't be two extremes. And that was something I struggled with initially when I started kind of getting into this, was feeling really, really bad that I was eating meat. And that's not the point. Like, that's not what we should be doing, or like shaming people for their food choices. That's where culture comes in too, because a lot of these food decisions are so cultural, and that's an important piece of the puzzle. In my opinion, that's also part of food sustainability. And so that's really, you know, where we're coming at. We just want to engage everybody in these conversations and make it fun too. Like, food is fun. Food is really good. Food shouldn't be a stressful part of the equation.
And kelp is so positive. Now, don't you have an Instagram account, or?
Yeah, we do. We do. Eat more kelp. It's very
Eat more kelp? That
yeah.
sounds perfect.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. I know we've got a fourth panelist, so and we've got a challenge that's going to be announced. So I'm going to pass it back to Diane.
Okay. But I do want to thank Oriana for touching on so many different points, and so did Elizabeth. I mean, it definitely is a very big field to navigate, so it's very helpful, all that information. Now I would like to introduce Courtney Boyd Myers. She is an entrepreneur and environmentalist, co-founder of, I hope I say this right, AKUA, or AKUA, creating foods to feed the planet while reversing global warming and restoring health to our world's oceans. AKUA's ocean-farmed kelp and sea greens are sourced from a network of regenerative ocean farms along the northeast coast. So, Courtney, please tell us about why you founded AKUA. What is your kelp burger invention and the summer challenge that you are launching?
Yeah, sure. So great to be here. Diane, you nailed the name, so don't worry about that.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll just start off by jumping right in and then we can kind of work backwards from there. But we've had, recent conversations with some of our sales team about whether we call it the kelp burger or the akua burger. And because the Beyond Burger is not called, the pea protein burger, and the Impossible Burger is not called the, soy heme burger. And there's people that are not on this call that might hear kelp and think, ew. And I have two problems with not calling it the kelp burger. First of all, I think the kelp burger sounds freaking awesome, and I think the kelp burger rolls off your tongue way better than the akua burger, which, like Diane had an issue with, people don't know how to pronounce. And I don't really want to change our entire brand at this point. And I love the fact that we're the only kelp burger in the market, and we're going to own that. The only kelp jerky, the kelp burger, etc. But I need everyone on this call to work so hard over these next 2 years that by the time we are selling in places like Ohio, et cetera, that everyone is excited about kelp and no one has that ick factor anymore, because I don't want to change the name of my product. So it takes a village of amazing people. I'm seeing so many women on this call, which is great too. I don't know if it was a women themed event, but this is amazing. And I think that I've always come into this industry from like a rising tide lifts all boats mentality. And I think it's just so important that we all work together. So I started this company because it sounds like a lot of people had this, existential personal crisis with how to address climate change and reorient your career around solutions. I grew up in a family where my dad, God bless him, invented the Burger King Kids Club and was VP of marketing at Pepsi Cola for 10 years and invented Chester the Cheeto and the Keebler Elves and ate a diet that would mirror that and gave himself 2 heart attacks and diabetes and cancer. And he's still kicking. But right now he runs the Akua mailroom and edits all of our packaging, and sort of a karmic way to get back at that. I'm here as 2 personal missions: climate change and also health. And I think a lot of these big food companies have a lot to answer when it comes to both of those things. Yeah. And so when I learned about kelp, and I was like, wow, you can create food that's like as healthy for the planet as it is for you too. And so I gave up my career in technology and startups and drove full, speed ahead into kelp. We launched kelp jerky in 2019. I'll say that our biggest learning there for people in the room who are wanting to start products made from kelp, one is don't make a product that's impossible to make like kelp jerky. We have custom molds around each piece in a dehydrator room. It's just a horrible product to make at scale. And 2, the product's 70% kelp, and it's a lot of kelp for your average white American. And so I think that, and someone like Victoria knows, and other chefs on this call, like introducing kelp in a way that is palpable and with other types of ingredients that like mushrooms and, different sort of Asian flavors or not, but it's something that sort of balances that kelp and delivers it, which is a very new taste to a lot of people. So we pivoted real hard last year in the pandemic, almost ran out of money. And we were like, we need to make a product that's, one, just so delicious, because at the end of the day, the consumer really cares about that. Then they care about health, and then they care about sustainability. And so the burger is so delicious. A lot of people have had it. We're really proud of it. And we didn't have any money to do product development. So thankfully it was the pandemic and everyone and their mom was just trying to buy anything interesting they could online at this point. So we worked with like 1,000 people last year over 6 months to iterate on our burger, and they would try a recipe, and then 2 weeks later we'd send them a new one and we'd get feedback like that. So we, had a food scientist and a chef, but we really community built this burger. We launched it May 20th. I don't know what else I can say, but we're, right now I think we're trying to get everyone to try this burger. And when the Eat More Kelp team reached out and said, hey, we've got this amazing summer challenge, let me run it by you. And I was like, where do I pay? What's the catch? And it was just like, it's so amazing to have your guys' support. So the challenge is really simple. It's just, when you're eating kelp burgers this summer, sharing that experience on social media with the hashtag Eat More Kelp Burgers. And we're going to pick that hashtag out, at least once a month and send people free 12 packs as a thank you for spreading the news. So lots of opportunities to win free kelp burgers. And then, we're also looking, for Victoria, let's chat, but we're really looking for restaurant partnerships too at this point. In New York City, we're launching with Seymour's. They're like a great example of someone who's perfect for us because they're all about sustainable seafood, and they've never introduced seaweed. So that's awesome. But yeah, we're looking to, you know, really get this thing in a lot of restaurants this summer, sell it direct to consumer, and then we're doing a retail launch at the end of the summer.
Great. I love hearing about this. Is it for chefs and for the general public, your challenge?
Oh, the challenge is for everybody. Yeah, more people, the better. You know, I mean, I haven't actually tracked the hashtag yet, Ariana. I don't know if you have, but I think, you know, we've got an email going out to our newsletter about it this coming week. We're going to post it on our Instagram and whatnot. We're doing it like around the summer solstice because it's like officially summer.
So I know I'm in touch with a chef who's doing a reduced food waste project with us, which is very exciting. And I can talk to him about, what does he do? Go to Akua, order the burgers, do experiment with them, and then put something up on Instagram?
Yeah, that's the goal. Even better if they want to add it to their menus.
Is there like a prize at the end of summer? I mean, the winner? I don't know.
You know, right now we're just giving them out free kelp burgers, but I am open to you know, someone wants to, we're open to bigger prizes and bigger ideas for sure.
Great.
I just got a question in the chat. Where can we buy, you know, where are you targeting to sell the your kelp burgers out here on the East End?
We're in retail wise or restaurants? Because restaurants, we don't have, retail. You know, we have a whole retail sales team who's sort of figuring that out. I think they mentioned, is it citronella? It sounds like a candle, but
right.
Cinderella.
Yeah, so
Cinderella.
We're targeting out there for sure. I'm more of a Cape Cod girl, so I don't know the Hamptons very well, but it's definitely
Another
on our
one
list.
you might want to try is Provisions. Provisions Market. They have a couple of locations here on the East End. They are a natural market. They may be very interested.
And I see, Courtney, you put in the chat box, you've got a code, Akua Love, for 20% off. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
I think we're open for questions. What do you say, Diane?
Yeah.
Unless we want to do a lightning round. I opened, everyone can just unmute themselves and ask a question. Or if there's no questions, we have a lightning round ready.
If
I
you
see
have
so many friends. No one has questions.
You could put it in the chat box or raise
Pardon
your
me?
So. Also, someone suggested selling in the Wild by Nature, which is also a supermarket chain out here on Long Island.
Cool. Wild by Nature. Got it.
Sorry, I'm gonna
panelists have a
have to
question
dash,
for each other.
guys. I have to go do service in 30 minutes, and I have a lineup. Everyone's waiting for me. If that's okay.
Chef Victoria, thank you so much. It was
Thank you for the invitation. This was really incredible. So I hope we can continue the conversation. Oriana, I'm gonna see you here in July. I'm very excited. If anyone wants to come to Fulgurants, please, you know, send me an email. I know the reservations are a little crazy, but I can help. Okay, so
thank you, Chef.
And let's just keep the conversation. Thank you for this invitation. It means the world to me. Thank you so much.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Well,
let's see.
Our lightning round question.
Yes.
We can go around for 3 panelists.
Okay. The kelp burgers, we can just jump right in there. Can you give us any tips on cooking the kelp burgers? Is there a favorite way that you have, Courtney?
So first, our new recipe, if you bought them after May 20th, they need to be thawed 20 to 30 minutes before you cook them. And then you just cook them on a pan with some olive oil, you know, some heat, 4 minutes on either side, 3 to 4 minutes. Kind of just wait till you hear the sizzle and then flip it. You want it to get a little like crusty and caramelized on either side, and then, you know, hot all the way through. I love just eating it as a burger because, you know, what a treat. But my favorite way is as a kelp burger bolognese. So, you know, really, we're launching a major recipe section soon, but any recipe where you would sort of have ground beef in it, you could just mix up the kelp burgers and
You
replace
have
that.
to
So
tell us about the bolognese. Well, okay. Is it
Yeah.
like you soak kelp in meat or no?
I know you use the kelp
kelp
burger
burger.
meat in replace of the cow burger meat in a bolognese recipe.
Okay. When I make my bolognese, I soak the meat in milk. So I don't. I'm sure you don't do that with the kelp
It
burger.
sounds like you. It sounds like I should break my veganism to try your bolognese.
It's very good.
Yeah, I'll send you guys that recipe here.
We're gonna have to feature that one on Eat More Kelp.
Sounds good. Experiment with the milk first.
Sean, hi Sean, good to see you. Sean Barrett is asking, Oriana, how do you say eat more kelp burgers in French?
Je veux manger plus de burgers de kelp.
Slowly, please. Is it true that fulgurance means dazzling? I looked that up because I wanted to know what is this French word, this amazing restaurant.
I actually, this is the first time I hear the word, but it just sounds like it would mean that. And my mom is on the call, so I'm sure she can confirm who is French and who speaks.
Well, it was untranslatable in English, they said, so I had to look that up. Who else has cooked with a kelp burger? Oriana, did you do anything with a kelp burger?
I haven't. I've been away for a little bit, so I haven't had a chance to get my hands on a kelp burger, but I connected with Courtney's team, so hopefully we get to do something pretty cool.
Okay, great.
Between the two of us.
Irene says we're hosting events in LA this weekend. What is, somebody asked about, will there be any events about Eat More Kelp and the kelp burger?
We should organize one out on the East End in July. I'm working on a venue, but open to thoughts.
Can you tell us who you're thinking of, or are you looking for suggestions?
I'm trying to convince one of our investors who has a huge house out there to host everyone.
Oh, very good. Well, keep us on your email list.
Yes, definitely. We can round up some people for you.
North Fork or South Fork? You know, we don't go in the summertime. It's very hard, traffic-wise, to go from fork to fork. So you might consider both forks.
I'm coming from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, so you guys can come from the other fork.
Okay.
Yeah.
Akua is hosting an event at Southampton Arts Center on July 8th.
Well, no,
that's news. That's great.
We're just donating kelp jerky for that.
Okay.
Yeah, we tried to get the burgers in, but I think with some COVID stuff, it wasn't easy to do.
Well, I have a venue in mind for the North Fork. I'd love to talk to you about.
That would be awesome.
I'm not, I don't control it, but I can make the pitch. Yeah.
That's good to know about the event in Southampton at the Southampton Arts Center, because it's something that's coming up soon. So that's exciting.
Definitely, yeah.
All right.
So oysters and kelp together. Anyone prepared anything with the two?
I used to snack on the kombu that was left when I had made dashi, the Japanese stock, and I would just cut the kombu thin. But since then, I haven't had access to kelp other than the dried kelp in the health food store.
Ellen, are you a chef?
I was a restaurant chef, and now I'm a private chef. Yes. And
are you using kelp at all?
Well, no, that's what I'm not quite sure where to get it. I go to Corjay's fairly frequently. I've never seen it there. Does it ever come through fish stores, or I'm not quite sure how to get at it.
I think you have to order kelp from Maine or Connecticut. That's what we're trying to change in New York State, to allow our oyster farmers to grow kelp commercially. Right now, it can be grown as part of a scientific experiment, but we're this close to getting the law passed to allow oyster farmers to add kelp to their production. And then you'll start seeing it in stores. We're just waiting for the governor to sign the bill.
Yes, I mean, it's pretty much almost there. It's just kind of getting through that last hurdle. But yes, Stony Brook has done a lot of pilot programs working with oyster farmers. So there is sugar kelp that is being grown out here on the East End in Murch's Bay. And we were actually involved with Eros Cultured Oyster is a hatchery that we purchase our seed from, our oyster seed, and they also create scallop and clam broodstock and seed. But they were doing a pilot program, and we did go out one day just to kind of check the long lines with them. So it is out here. It is just not available for purchase yet.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it just will kind of need to get through those permitting hurdles so that we can land the kelp along with our oysters and shellfish. So. And
Courtney wrote in the chat box that Akua sells dried kelp noodles, and they're hard to stay. They sell out. So hard to keep in stock.
It's as close as I have found to sort of just buying kelp. Atlantic Sea Farms also sells a like wet frozen kelp. These are dried, and either from Maine.
Great.
Got it. I used to do the oyster program down at Tiana Bay through Cornell Cooperative Extension, and there was a ton of seaweed of various different types that would grow on my oyster frames, that we would always scrape it off. And it always occurred to me that I should be eating some of it. I know there are cultures where you eat all those sea vegetables, but we weren't, partly because we didn't know what they were or whether they were safe to eat or how to cook them.
Yeah, good point. It's a good point. It's good education.
That's where Eat More Kelp comes in.
There we go.
Exactly. So Oriana, are you doing something we should be watching for on Instagram or Facebook or where?
Yeah, our main platform is going to be Instagram, and we have we just took over very recently. We announced it last week. So Josh and I have a lot of content ideas that we want to start pushing out. Most of it is going to be, like I said, engaging with various industry leaders, including the women on this panel. So I hope to continue these conversations at the end after this panel.
Great.
And so it's be a mix of education, a mix of recipes, just cool interviews, eventually a fully sustainable merch line. So a lot to look forward to.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot.
I see Josh is on the call. Should we ask him to give us a recipe, being a chef?
Josh, up to you.
Yeah, hi, I'm here, everyone. Unfortunately, hey, I can't come on the video. Nice to meet you as well. With the kelp burger, I actually got my hands on one last week, a Kua kelp burger, and I did something cool with it. I pan-seared it and then put it in the RoboCoupe and made like a nice little puree out of it and did like a beef tartare rendition of it.
Send photos. That sounds so good.
With like a fried egg, and like it was actually like an Asian style beef tartare with like soy sauce and fish sauce and rice wine vinegar with some chopped herbs. So it was pretty tasty.
It was raw.
No, I cooked it first.
You did
I cooked it first and then blended it. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds delicious.
I love it, Courtney. It's a great product.
Wow, thank you. That's so delicious. Please send me photos next time you do it.
I will, no problem.
I think what I've heard from friends is that it goes really well with Asian kind of seasonings. So I'm going to try what you just told us, Josh.
Yeah, and I also want to try it just like a burger. Like I want it with, I want it with lettuce and tomato and, well, I'm gluten-free, so a gluten-free bun. Like I really want it just like a good burger. I want to try it like that. Off the grill, maybe.
Exactly.
Is it okay on the grill?
As long as you thaw it for like 20, 30 minutes before you throw it on the grill, absolutely.
Okay.
So our old recipe, if anyone's tried that, the messaging was like, keep it frozen, cook it from frozen. And now we've created a much better bind, so it stays on a grill better, but it needs to sort of come out of its frozen shape before it cooks to keep its texture. We're sort of learning this week by week, if I'm honest with you.
All right. Well, we'll put it up on Instagram when we try it.
I see Dar's on the call, and I'd love to ask her what her favorite way of cooking kelp is.
Yeah, Dar's an expert in cooking.
I know she's been eating kelp for a year or more.
I'm not an expert because she won't like that, but she's been experimenting.
Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Muted. Muted.
Can we hear you now?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't often cook it because I cheat and use some of Courtney's products, such as these. So good. And we
jerky.
We run this program called the Carbon Crew Project, helping people to make 5-year climate action plans. And so when we get to the section on food and every day, and so we put out there what our favorite seaweeds are. And 2 of our favorite seaweeds are Courtney's kelp burgers. My husband would never eat seaweed in a million years. And Diane, what you were talking about, putting a little avocado and a little whatever on it. And man, it was just fabulous. These are so great.
It's the jerky.
There are, I think, 4 or 5 different varieties, and they're small enough so you can just have a little bite here whenever and get all your nutrients, because I missed part of the program, but it's not just good for all of us because of the carbon in the ocean, but the nutrients are really, really good for our bodies. I'm looking forward to bigger packaging so that I can get a lot more in one container. That's one thing. Anyway, you're going to love all that stuff. And thanks for this great program, Diane and Mary, and you panelists have been fabulous.
So Courtney, it was worth it to go through that, making the jerky, the seafood jerky.
Yeah, I mean,
the process.
We have a lot of people that love it, but it's just it's not like the burger in terms of reception. So
you're getting a bigger reception with the burger.
Yeah, and when you run a business, it's not like just about customers. It's also about those like cranky investors. And they all really like the burger, and burgers are so cool right now. And so, yeah, the jerky is kind of like my really like geeky smart child that no one wants to take to the prom.
Well, since you're so Northeast Coast, oriented with all your, where you source everything, is most of your clientele from the Northeast, or you're
we call our
nationwide?
We say we have coastal clients, so I would say all the way from Maine down to Florida, but skipping over some of the states that still fly Confederate flags, and then you skip over to the other coast, and we're really doing well in Pacific Northwest down to San Diego.
No, nothing like you out there. There's no other.
There's a ton of great seaweed and kelp companies out there, and none that are tackling the meat alternative space. Yeah, but it is funny. It's very coastal. I remember, like at one point, I feel like we're like like Bernie supporters are like our people, and like it's just it's the middle of the flyover states. Like we don't see a ton from them.
Also, I have to say, both grandparents, one was East Coast and one was Lake Erie. So it's the East Coast, mentality of eating from the sea, and kelp and fish and lobster and oysters, is you don't really do that more middle of the country.
Of course. Yeah, no, it makes total sense for sure. And yeah, it's very much like a New York, LA, San Francisco, an extension, that kind of diet. I'm sure we could have a really good business just in the Hamptons. Like there's a lot of people out there that, really, I think anyone that grows up with kind of that fishing town mentality is pretty much our vibe.
Definitely. Definitely. This has been really fabulous, you guys. I'm enjoying it totally. And I'm just looking to see if anyone has any questions. I'm pretty bad at looking at this chat box, Diane. I don't know if you've been able to look at it.
Yeah, I think that all the questions have been answered from the chat.
Okay, great. If anyone has a question at this moment, I think you can just shout out or raise your hand. I'm one or the other.
Yeah,
we're good?
I don't see anything. Okay.
I'm so pleased you did this, though. I have been curious about kelp, and I don't really have a specific question, just that I'm curious about it, and I was glad to learn a lot more about it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope we're growing it soon.
Just so you know,
Yeah.
Ellen is a chef as well. So
That's what she was saying.
Gets around, yeah.
A private chef, right?
Now, yeah.
If you want to put your information in the chat box, you're free to do that.
Oh.
She also has given a number of presentations on food waste. So if she likes kelp, it'll get around.
Great.
We'll have to work together on Eat More Kelp for some recipes.
Good
That
idea.
sounds fun.
Yeah, that's a great
That
idea.
sounds fun. I will put my email.
I'm going to talk with Elizabeth after this about some places that I have in mind where maybe there can be some kind of an Eat More Kelp event or launch or splash or something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That would be really great.
Yeah. You can definitely think of some.
We're the North Fork too here.
Okay, well, I think that's it.
Thank you.
It's
okay.
I just want to say thank you very much to everyone. You know, the information that you touched upon has really been, it's been, you know, you've really kind of covered a lot of bases, like I said earlier, and it's been beneficial and very intriguing. So thank you for all the information that you've explained to us.
It was really great. Our panelists were wonderful, and I did put information about them in the chat box, so hopefully you can access that. And we will be sending an email out to everyone who is on the Drawdown East End email list with information about the panelists, but also information about Eat More Kelp. And if there's any questions that we missed, we will be putting those answers in that email as well. And hopefully, if we can turn it around quickly, maybe even a link to this panel, because I know we've been recording.
Yes.
So thank you all very much. This has been really, really terrific.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye. Nice to meet you so much.
Good night, all. Have a great dinner.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.